The night city never slept. Neon lights burned across the streets like electric fire, and rain fell slowly, washing colors into the dark alleys. The people who walked here kept their heads down. No one wanted to see too much. No one wanted to ask questions. In the middle of this restless city, a man walked alone. His name was Daniel. His jacket was old, his eyes tired, but there was a sharpness in his face, the kind of sharpness that comes from years of disappointment. He had worked, he had lost, and now he lived each day like a shadow. But tonight was different. Tonight he carried money in his pocket and a dangerous thought in his mind. At the far end of a narrow street stood a door without a sign. The door was black steel, guarded by two men who looked like wolves in human form. Daniel stopped. His heart beat faster. He had heard stories about this place, whispers told only in the corners of bars. A place where you could rent what no human should own. Alien girls, captives from distant stars. The guards looked at him, measuring him like hunters measure prey. One of them gave a slow nod, and the door opened. Inside, the air was heavy with smoke and strange perfume. Lights flickered red and blue. Music hummed low, almost like a warning. A man in a gray suit stepped forward. His smile was wide, but his eyes were colder than the rain outside. "First time here?" the man asked. Daniel did not answer. He only placed the money on the table. His hands did not shake, but his throat felt dry. The man in the gray suit counted the bills and gave a short laugh. "You want the alien girl, don't you?" Daniel's silence was enough. "Be careful," the man said, leaning close. "She is not like the others. One night only. Return her by morning, or the price will be more than you can pay." The words pressed into Daniel's ears, but he nodded anyway. He was ready, or at least he thought he was. Moments later, the door at the back opened. Two guards led her out. She was taller than he expected, with silver skin that caught the neon, light like liquid metal. Her eyes glowed faint blue, and her hair shimmered as if woven from starlight. But it was not her beauty that struck him. It was her fear. She did not walk like someone owned. She walked like someone broken. When she stood before him, Daniel could not speak. He had imagined arrogance, pride, or maybe anger. Instead, he saw silence. She kept her head lowered, her wrists bound by a thin band of glowing steel. The man in the gray suit placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "One night," he repeated, "no more." Daniel led her outside, back into the wet streets. The city noise swallowed them as they walked. He rented a room in an old building, a place with broken windows and a humming neon sign. The room was small, with one bed, one chair, and a lamp that flickered weakly. He closed the door. For a long time, neither of them moved. The alien girl sat on the edge of the bed, her hands folded tightly. Daniel sat in the chair, staring at her, searching for words, but words failed. Finally, she looked up. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "Why did you choose me?" Daniel blinked. He did not know. Maybe it was the stories. Maybe it was the loneliness. Maybe it was the look in her eyes when she entered the room. "You don't have to speak," she said quickly, lowering her head again. It doesn't matter. But it did matter. To him. He leaned forward. "What's your name?" She hesitated. For a moment, fear returned to her eyes. Then she whispered a name that sounded like music, though her voice cracked when she said it. He repeated it softly, and for the first time she looked at him without fear. Hours passed. The night stretched on. Daniel expected something else, something physical, something empty. But instead they talked. She told him fragments about her world, skies of glass, rivers of light, and people who lived not by laws, but by harmony. Every time she spoke, her voice shook as if she feared punishment just for remembering. Daniel listened. He asked questions. He forgot the time. And then she leaned closer, her blue eyes glowing faintly in the dark. She whispered so quietly he almost did not hear. Please, don't send me back." The room froze. Daniel's heart thudded heavy inside his chest. He had only rented her for one night. By dawn, the guards would come. By dawn, she would be taken. But in that moment, as her trembling hands gripped his, he felt something impossible. Not desire, not pity. Something deeper. The city roared outside, alive with neon and thunder. But in the small room, silence grew heavy, filled only with her plea. And Daniel knew, even before the night ended, that his life had already changed forever. The city outside did not care what happened inside the small rented room. Cars whispered down wet streets, voices shouted in alleys, and neon signs buzzed with tired light. But for Daniel, the world had shrunk. It was only him and her, the alien. "Girl?" She sat on the bed, hands still bound by the glowing steel band. He could see how the faint light cut into her silver skin, leaving marks that looked almost like burns. She kept her eyes down, afraid to meet his gaze again after her whispered plea. "Please, don't send me back." Daniel did not know what to do. He had imagined this night 100 different ways. None of them looked like this. He had expected emptiness, distraction, maybe even a moment of false comfort. But not this silence, not this strange feeling in his chest, heavy and alive at the same time. Finally he stood and spoke, his voice low. "Let me take that off." She flinched, pulling her hands back as if he had threatened her. "It's all right," he said. "I'm not going to hurt you." Her blue eyes flickered with doubt. Slowly, carefully, he touched the band. It pulsed once as if warning him. Then, with surprising ease, it unlocked and slid off. He dropped it on the floor, and for the first time, her hands were free. The alien girl flexed her fingers, staring at them like she had forgotten they were hers. A quiet gasp escaped her lips. "What is your world like?" Daniel asked gently, breaking the silence. She looked at him, confused. No one had asked her that before. "My world," she began, her voice trembling. "We live under glass skies. The light there is soft like water. We grow food in crystal fields and children sing to call the rivers. There are no prisons, no chains." Her words slowed as her throat tightened. She turned away. "But that place is gone for me. I will never see it again." Daniel leaned forward in his chair. "Why not?" Her breath shook. "Because I was sold. My own people betrayed me. They gave me to the traders to buy their safety. I was a symbol once, but now I am only merchandise." Daniel felt a chill crawl across his spine. The idea of selling someone, no, not just someone, but a being with a soul, made him sick. "They keep us here," she continued. "We are not allowed to speak our names, not allowed to remember who we are. We belong to the buyers, that is all." Her voice broke on the last words, and she covered her face with her hands. For a long time, the room was filled only with her quiet sobs and the buzz of the lamp. Daniel sat back, staring at the band on the floor. Something inside him shifted. He had walked into this place searching for escape, for something temporary. But now he realized he had walked into something far bigger than himself. He reached out, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. She froze at first, then slowly lowered her hands. Her face was streaked with tears that shimmered like liquid light. "You're not merchandise," he said softly. "Not to me." Her eyes widened, as if the words were a language she had never heard before. Minutes passed. The clock ticked closer to dawn. They both knew time was short. The guards would return. The deal had been clear, one night only. But instead of lying down, instead of pretending, they talked. She told him fragments of her childhood, racing with friends under glowing trees, hiding in caves where fireflies burned like stars. She spoke of songs that healed sickness, of families that never let one another go. In return, Daniel told her about his own life, about the job he lost, the brother he could not save, the emptiness that followed him like a shadow. He did not know why he shared these things, but with her the words came easily. For the first time in years, he did not feel invisible. As the hours passed, something shifted in the air. The room no longer felt like a prison. It felt like a fragile sanctuary hidden from the rest of the world. And yet, danger pressed in. Every sound outside, the slam of a door, the distant roar of engines, made Daniel's heart tighten. He knew they had no power here. He knew the men who owned her would not simply forgive delay. Near dawn, she suddenly sat up straight, her eyes wide. "They are coming," she whispered. Daniel froze. "How do you know?" She touched her temple. "I can feel the signal. They track me." The words hit him like ice. His time was up. A knock shook the door hard and sharp. The girl gripped his arm. Her blue eyes blazed with desperation. "Don't let them take me back." The knock came again, louder this time. Daniel stared at the door, then at her. His chest burned with fear, but deeper than that, something else grew, a resolve he had never felt before. For one night he had listened. For one night he had seen her not as an alien, not as a possession, but as a person, and he knew in that moment that the story would not end here. The door shook under another hit. The guards would break in soon. Daniel stood. His hand went to the lamp switch and the room fell into darkness. Whatever happened next, he would not give her up so easily. The pounding on the door grew louder. Dust shook from the old ceiling. Daniel stood frozen, the alien girl clutching his arm, her breath quick and shallow. The guards would not wait much longer. If they broke in, it would all be over. She would be dragged away, chained again, and he would never see her. His mind raced. He had money, yes, but money only bought time. The man in the gray suit had been clear. One night only. The girl whispered, "Please, do not open." Her voice cut into him deeper than the fists against the door. The pounding stopped suddenly. Silence pressed heavy. Then a calm, cold voice floated through the wood. "Time is up. Return the girl." Daniel swallowed hard. Every part of him screamed. To obey, to open the door, to give her back and walk away. That was the safe choice. That was the simple choice. But his hands would not move. His legs stayed rooted. "No," he muttered under his breath. The girl stared at him, her glowing eyes wide. "What did you say?" "I said no," Daniel repeated, louder this time. The voice outside sharpened. "Do not make mistakes, human. Open or we open for you." Daniel turned toward her. "I can't let them take you." Tears welled in her eyes, but she shook her head. "You cannot fight them. They will kill you." "Then let them try." His voice was rough, filled with a fire he had not felt in years. The door slammed again, shaking under the guards' fists. Daniel looked around the tiny room. He had nothing, no weapons, no plan, but he had resolve. And resolve was sometimes more dangerous than steel. He pulled the chair against the door, jamming it under the handle. It would not stop them for long, but it would slow them. The girl whispered something in her own language, words like music, mixed with sorrow. Daniel did not understand, but he understood the tone, gratitude and fear together. The pounding stopped, once more. Silence stretched. Then heavy boots marched away. Daniel and the girl held their breath. Minutes crawled by. "They're gone?" Daniel whispered. "No," she said softly. "They are waiting. They will not leave." He exhaled slowly, rubbing his face with trembling hands. He could not keep her here forever. He needed a plan. "Listen," he said, crouching in front of her. What if I buy you?" She looked at him like he had spoken madness. "Buy me? You cannot. The price is too high." "How high?" "More than money," she said. "More than you can carry. Freedom is not cheap." Daniel clenched his jaw. He remembered the gray-suited man's mocking laugh. She is not like the others. He had known this girl was special, valuable. That was why they guarded her so fiercely, but Daniel's heart had already chosen. "I don't care what it costs," he said firmly. "I'll find a way." Her eyes softened, but her lips trembled. Why? Why risk everything for me? You don't even know me. Daniel stared at her, searching for the answer inside himself. Why? Because he was tired of being nothing. Because she was the first soul who had made him feel alive again. Because she deserved more than chains. Because you asked me not to send you back, he finally said. And I listened. For a long time, she stared at him, her blue eyes shimmering, like hidden oceans. Then she nodded once, slow and fragile, as if daring to believe him. The silence broke when the gray-suited man himself returned. His voice called from outside the door, calm and sharp like a blade. Mr. Daniel, do not play games. Step out and we can talk. You want her? Then let us discuss purchase. Daniel's blood ran cold. They had expected this. They had planned for it. He glanced at the girl. Her face had turned pale, but she whispered, "Do not trust him." Daniel stood, his fists clenched. "I don't trust him," he muttered. "But maybe I can beat him at his own game." He opened the door just a crack. 2 guards loomed. Outside, their eyes dead and cruel. Between them stood the gray-suited man, smiling like a vulture. "Good," the man said smoothly. "You have courage. That makes you interesting. Shall we discuss her value?" Daniel stepped into the hall, closing the door gently behind him. The girl pressed her ear against the wood, heart racing. The man leaned closer to Daniel, lowering his voice. "You cannot imagine her worth. She is no ordinary alien. She is a rarity, royal blood, a treasure from a fallen world. People would kill for her. And you think you can buy her?" Daniel's mouth was dry, but he forced himself to speak. "Name your price." The man laughed softly, cruelly. "Your life." The guards grinned. Daniel's pulse thundered in his ears. He had expected money, power, maybe servitude. But this was a trap. And yet in that moment fear did not control him. He straightened, his voice steady. "Then take it. But she stays free." The gray-suited man tilted his head, amused. Bold, stupid, but bold. He snapped his fingers. The guards moved forward. Inside the room, the girl pressed her hands together, whispering words in her language. The air around her trembled faintly, as if stirred by unseen energy. The choice had been made. Daniel would not turn back. Whether it cost him everything or gave him something new, he had chosen her side. And the night was far from over. The hallway smelled of damp metal and smoke. Daniel stood face to face with the gray-suited man and his guards, his heart pounding so hard it felt like it would break his ribs. The man's smile was sharp, his eyes colder than glass. "You can't win," the dealer said softly. "You don't buy freedom, you pay for it with your blood." The guards moved closer, their boots echoing against the cracked floor. Daniel's fists clenched, but he had nothing. No weapon, no plan. Only stubborn fire inside his chest. Inside the room, the alien girl whispered faster in her language. The air shivered around her hands, as if some unseen force waited for her. Command. Then, before Daniel could blink, the lamp inside the room exploded. Sparks lit the air like fireflies. The guards flinched, surprised. Daniel took his chance. He lunged forward, slamming his shoulder into one guard. The man stumbled, crashing against the wall. The second guard swung a heavy fist, but Daniel ducked. Pain burned across his cheek as the punch grazed him, but adrenaline carried him forward. He grabbed the guard's arm and shoved him hard into the first man. Both stumbled together, their curses filling the hall. The gray-suited man did not move. He only watched, his smile never fading. Daniel rushed back into the room. "We have to go now." The girl stood by the window, her hands glowing faintly blue. The broken lamp flickered as if some of its pieces still obeyed her will. "You did that?" Daniel asked, shocked. She nodded once, fear in her eyes. "It is only small. My strength is weak here. But we must run." Together they shoved the old window open. Rain blew in, cold against their faces. Below, the alley stretched dark and narrow, lit only by a flickering sign. It was a long drop, but there was no other way. Daniel climbed first, lowering himself onto the rusted fire escape. The metal groaned under his weight. The girl followed, moving with a strange grace despite her fear. Behind them, the door splintered. The guards roared as they pushed into the room. "Go!" Daniel shouted. They raced down the fire escape, footsteps clanging against the wet metal. Shouts erupted above, and soon, heavy boots stormed onto the fire escape after them. At the bottom, Daniel leapt into the alley. His knees ached with the impact, but he stayed standing. The girl landed beside him, her silver skin shining under the rain. "Which way?" she asked, her voice urgent. Daniel scanned the alley. To the left, lights glowed from the main street. Too dangerous. To the right, shadows stretched into a maze of forgotten buildings. "Right," he said. They ran. The alley twisted like a snake, turning into darker passages where neon could not reach. Trash piled high, rats scattered at their steps, and old machines rusted in silence. The rain fell harder, soaking their clothes, but they did not stop. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew closer. Boots slamming, voices shouting. "They won't stop," the girl gasped. "Then we don't stop either." Daniel grabbed her, hand pulling her faster. They burst out into a wider street, half deserted. A broken tram lay on its side, wires sparking like angry snakes. Daniel pulled her toward it, crouching behind the wreck for cover. The girl pressed her glowing hands against the tram. The sparks bent toward her palms, dancing like obedient fire. Daniel stared in shock. "You can control it?" "Not well," she whispered, "but enough." She raised her hands, and for a moment the broken wires lit brighter, sending a sharp crack of electricity through the air. The pursuing guards stopped at the alley mouth, hesitating. The sight of her glowing hands slowed their steps. Daniel's breath came fast, fogging in the cold night. He had never seen anything like it, but he didn't ask questions. The guards shouted into their radios. More footsteps echoed in the distance. "They're calling more," Daniel said. The girl's voice was tight. "They will hunt me always. They cannot let me go." Daniel looked at her, at the fear in her eyes, at the way her silver skin shivered in the rain. Something inside him hardened. "Then we make it harder for them." They ran again, slipping. Through abandoned markets, through tunnels lit only by broken lamps. Each corner brought new danger, shadows shifting, sounds of pursuit closing in. At one point, a hover drone whirred overhead, its red eye scanning the ground. Daniel yanked her into the ruins of an old shop, holding her close until the drone passed. She trembled in his arms, and he realized she was not trembling from fear alone. She was exhausted. "We can't keep running like this," she whispered. Daniel looked around. In the distance, a ruined tower rose high, its top lost in mist. It was far, but it offered height, maybe shelter, maybe a chance to breathe. "There," he said. "We head for that." The girl nodded weakly. Together they pushed onward, the tower like a beacon in the night. But behind them, the gray-suited man's voice echoed across the rain, carried by speakers from a drone. "You cannot run. Forever, Daniel. She belongs to us. The more you fight, the higher the cost." Daniel clenched his jaw. He didn't answer. Not yet. They reached the base of the tower, its doors broken, its halls empty. Inside, shadows stretched wide, but it was dry, and for a moment silence returned. The girl collapsed onto the floor, breathing hard. Her glow had faded, leaving her weaker. Daniel knelt beside her, his chest aching with every breath. He looked at her, at the fragile way she curled into herself, and made a silent vow. No matter what it cost, he would not give her back. The rain outside softened, but the night was far from over. Above them, the tower creaked, old and broken, but strong enough to hold them for now. In the distance, searchlights cut through the darkness, sweeping closer. The escape had only just begun. The tower was silent except for the sound of dripping water echoing through broken pipes. Daniel lit a small flame from an old lighter he carried, its weak glow pushing back the darkness. The alien girl sat against the wall, her silver skin dimmed, her breathing shallow. Her glowing hands no longer shone, whatever strength she had used was gone. She looked fragile now, more human than alien. Daniel crouched beside her. Are you hurt? She shook her head slowly. Not hurt, only drained. My power is like a river. When I am far from the stars, it dries. Daniel frowned. So you're weaker here? Yes, she whispered. This city steals light. It steals everything. Daniel sat back, running, a hand over his tired face. He wanted to tell her they were safe, but the truth pressed heavy. They were not. The searchlights outside swept across the streets, hunting. Voices echoed faintly, soldiers moving closer. For now, the tower hid them. But for how long? He looked at her again, and something in his chest tightened. She was more than beautiful. She was alive in a way the city was not. Even in her weakness, she carried dignity, something no chains could break. Tell me your name again, Daniel said softly. She looked up at him, her blue eyes tired but steady. Leora. He repeated it, letting the sound roll slowly from his tongue. Leora. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. You remember? I won't forget. For a moment, silence settled, gentler this time. The rain outside had softened, the storm giving them a small gift of peace. Daniel leaned against the wall, staring at the cracked ceiling. You said you were betrayed? By your own people? Leora's eyes darkened. Yes. My family was important. My bloodline carried authority. But in war, power is dangerous. Enemies rose. My people feared rebellion, so they gave me away. A trade, their safety for my chains. Her voice broke, and she turned her face away. Daniel clenched his fists. The idea sickened him. To sell someone like her, to sell anyone, felt like the deepest kind of sin. You were a princess, he said quietly. Leora shook her head. I was. Now I am nothing. Daniel leaned closer. No, you are not nothing. You're more real than anything I've seen in this city. She blinked at him, startled by his tone. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not since before her capture. Her voice trembled. Why do you care? You don't know me. You risk death for me, and still, you stay. Daniel searched her eyes. How could he explain it? His life before her had been empty, a blur of wasted days. But in her, he saw something worth fighting for, something that made him feel alive again. Because I've lost too much already, he said finally, and I won't lose you. Her breath caught. She wanted to argue, to say he could not fight the entire city, but instead her lips parted with a whisper. Thank you. They sat together in silence, the sound of distant soldiers searching, below echoing faintly. The tower creaked with the wind, but inside the broken hall warmth began to grow, not from the lighter's flame, but from their closeness. Daniel's body ached, his face still bruised from the fight, but when she leaned, her head against his shoulder, all pain seemed distant. Leora closed her eyes, her voice soft. Do humans always fight like you? Daniel let out a small laugh. No, most don't. But sometimes when something matters, we fight harder than anyone expects. Her lips curved into a tired smile. That is why they fear your kind. Humans fight for what they love. The word love hung heavy in the air. Daniel did not answer. He only stared into the shadows, his heart pounding faster than it should. Minutes stretched into an hour. The soldiers outside moved further away, at least for now. Daniel let himself breathe again. But the peace broke suddenly. A sharp sound pierced the silence, a faint beeping. Leora's eyes flew open. She clutched her arm. No. What is it? Daniel asked quickly. She pulled up her sleeve. Underneath her skin, glowing faintly, was a mark, a small embedded device pulsing with light. They're tracking me, she whispered. Always. They know exactly where I am. Daniel cursed under his breath. Can we remove it? Her face was pale. Not easily. If I try, it could kill me. Panic rose in Daniel's chest, but he forced it down. He grabbed her hands, holding them tight. Then we find another way. We'll hide, fight, whatever it takes. But I'm not giving you back." Tears gathered in her eyes. She stared at him, and for the first time hope flickered there. "Fragile, but real, you would fight the whole world for me?" she asked softly. Daniel nodded. Yes. Her lips trembled, but then she leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. For a heartbeat, the tower seemed to fade. The city, the soldiers, the danger, none of it mattered. Only this fragile bond between them, built in stolen hours. But outside, searchlights swept closer again. Voices barked orders. The tower walls shook with the sound of engines. The enemy was coming, and now with the tracker revealed, they would not stop. Daniel pulled away, his jaw tight. "Then let them come." He stood, eyes burning with fire. "We'll fight together." Leora rose beside him, her glow faint but steady. She touched his hand, her voice calm. Yes, together. The bond between them was no longer fragile. It was forged in danger, sealed in trust. And as the tower trembled under the weight of the coming storm, Daniel realized something terrifying and beautiful. He was no longer running for survival. He was running for her. The tower shook as engines roared outside. Searchlights painted white circles across the broken walls. Daniel stood near the doorway, his fists tight, while Leora's glow flickered faintly at his side. The hunters had found them. "They are here," Leora whispered, her voice steady but low. Daniel nodded. His chest burned with fear, but beneath it lived something stronger, a fire he could not put out. "Then we don't wait. We fight." Outside, boots hit the pavement. Voices barked commands, at least a dozen soldiers, maybe more. The gray-suited man had not come alone this time. Daniel pulled a rusted metal pipe from the floor. It was heavy, uneven, but it was something. He glanced at Leora. "Can you use your power?" She lifted her hands. The blue glow sparked weakly, flickering like dying embers. "Not much, but I can try." The first explosion came as the front doors were blown apart. Splinters of wood and shards of metal flew into the hall. Armed soldiers stormed in, their armor shining under the searchlights. Daniel charged first. His body moved before his mind could stop it. The pipe swung wide, slamming into the first soldier's helmet with a crack that echoed through the tower. The man dropped. Another raised his weapon. Daniel ducked, slamming the pipe into his stomach. Pain burned Daniel's arms, but he forced himself forward. Rage carried him. Behind him, Leora raised her glowing hands. A burst of light shot from her palms, striking a soldier's chest. Sparks leapt from his armor, and he collapsed, twitching. The effort drained her. She staggered, but Daniel caught her arm quickly. "Stay with me," he said, his breath ragged. She nodded weakly. "Always." The fight raged. More soldiers poured in. Daniel swung, blocked, and shoved, his body screaming, with pain. But he did not stop. Each strike was fueled by something deeper than survival. He was fighting for her. Leora, though weak, used her remaining strength carefully. She touched a broken wire hanging from the wall, and electricity surged through her hands. She released it in a blinding flash, forcing the soldiers back. The smell of burned circuits filled the air, but they were too many. The gray-suited man finally entered, calm as ever, stepping through the chaos like a shadow. His suit was untouched by dust or blood. His smile was thin, cruel. "You disappoint me, Daniel," he said. "You could have lived. Instead, you throw yourself into fire for a creature you cannot keep." Daniel stood panting, blood on his face, the pipe trembling in his grip. "She's not a creature, she's more human than you'll ever be." The man's smile widened. "Romantic. Useless. Kill him." The soldiers advanced again. Daniel tightened his hold on the pipe, ready to go down fighting. But before the soldiers could strike, Leora stepped forward. Her eyes burned brighter than before. The glow spread across her skin, growing, strengthening. Daniel stared wide-eyed. "What are you doing?" he shouted. Her voice rose, strong and clear. "I will not be their slave again." Light exploded from her body, filling the tower. The soldiers staggered, blinded. The ground trembled under the force of her power. For the first time, Daniel saw her not as fragile, not as broken, but as something magnificent, something unstoppable. The gray-suited man shielded his eyes, his calm mask cracking. Impossible! Daniel moved fast, using the chaos. He struck one soldier down, then another. The room shook with light and noise, but in the center of it all, Leora stood like a star reborn. But power came at a cost. Daniel saw her legs tremble, her body weakening. She could not hold it for long. "Leora!" he shouted, rushing to her side. "You'll burn yourself out." She turned to him, her eyes glowing with tears and light. "Then I burn for freedom." Her voice shook the air. A final wave of energy burst outward, throwing the remaining soldiers back. Weapons clattered. The walls cracked. Silence fell after, the shock wave, broken only by Daniel's ragged breathing. The soldiers were down. The gray-suited man stumbled, his perfect suit torn, his smile gone. He glared at Daniel and Leora with pure hatred. "This isn't over," he hissed. "She belongs. To us, she always will." Daniel raised the pipe, his voice steady despite his exhaustion. "Not anymore," the man sneered, stepping back into the shadows as more soldiers called to him outside. He retreated, his voice echoing through the hall. "You can run, but you cannot hide forever. The tracker binds her to us. There is no escape." And then he was gone. Daniel dropped the pipe, his arms shaking. He turned to Leora, who collapsed into his arms, her glow fading again. "Leora," he whispered, holding her close. "Stay with me." Her eyes fluttered open. "I'm here." He pressed his forehead against hers. His chest ached with relief and fear at once. They had survived the battle, but only just. Outside, sirens wailed. More enemies would come. The city itself felt like it had turned against them. But Daniel knew one thing. They had won this night. Not with strength, not with weapons, but with defiance. And in her weakened whisper, Leora spoke the words that sealed it. "You fight, not because you must. You fight because you love." Daniel held her tighter. For the first time in years, he did not feel empty. He felt whole. The tower stood broken around them, but within its shattered walls a new vow had been forged. The battle was not the end. It was the beginning. The tower was quiet now, but not safe. Smoke drifted from broken walls and the floor was scattered with debris. Daniel sat with Leora in his arms, her silver skin dim, her breathing shallow. Her glow had nearly vanished. Outside, the city still searched. Distant sirens echoed. The hunters would return and the gray-suited man would not stop. But inside the tower, there was a fragile silence. One last moment of peace. Daniel brushed a strand of starlight-like hair from Leora's face. "You're going to be all right," he whispered. Her lips curved into a weak smile. "I used too much. But I am alive. Because of you." Daniel shook his head. "Because of us." For a long time, they stayed like that, just breathing. Daniel felt his body ache from every wound, but holding her made him forget the pain. Finally, Leora stirred. She lifted her hand trembling and placed it against her chest where the faint glow of the tracker pulsed beneath her skin. "They will always find me," she said softly. "Until this mark is gone, I am never free." Daniel stared at the glowing pulse, anger tightening inside him. That tiny device buried under her skin chained her more than any band of steel. "Then we take it out," he said. Leora shook her head. "It could kill me." Daniel's voice hardened. "It could also save you. I'd rather fight death with you than let them drag you back into chains." Her eyes glistened. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not her people, not her captors. No one. Slowly, she nodded. "If I trust you, will you do it?" Daniel swallowed hard. "Yes." He found a piece of broken glass from the tower floor. His hands shook as he held it. He was no surgeon. One mistake could end her life. But her gaze never wavered. "You don't have to be afraid," she whispered. I already chose you." With trembling care, Daniel pressed the shard against her skin. She winced, but her hand squeezed his, steadying him. The glow pulsed brighter, as if resisting, as if the tracker itself knew what he was trying to do. Daniel gritted his teeth. "Hold on." Blood shimmered silver as the shard cut deeper. Then, at last, a small device slid free, glowing like a living ember. Daniel grabbed it with shaking fingers and hurled it across the room. It cracked against the wall, sparks bursting, then died. Leora gasped, her body arching in pain. For a terrible second, Daniel thought he had killed her. Leora. Her eyes fluttered open again, weak but alive. The glow beneath her skin was gone. Tears blurred Daniel's vision as relief poured through him. He held her tight. "You're free." She smiled faintly, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes, free. Because of you." The silence after was different. It was not fragile anymore. It was strong, like the calm after a storm. But Daniel knew they could not stay. The gray-suited man would return with more. The city was no longer theirs to hide in. He looked toward the broken window. Beyond the storm clouds, the stars shone faintly through. For the first time, they didn't feel distant. "Your world," he said slowly. "Can we reach it?" Leora's eyes softened. "Maybe, if we leave this place. If we find a ship." Daniel nodded. "Then we go together." She touched his cheek, her silver fingers trembling. "You would leave your home for me?" Daniel thought about his life here. Years of loss, loneliness, nothing left but shadows. Then he thought about her laugh, her courage, her fragile hope. "This place stopped being my home the moment I met you," he said. Her eyes filled with tears. For a moment, they simply held each other, the ruined tower around them fading from thought. But outside, the sound of engines rose again. Searchlights swept closer. Time was running out. Daniel stood, pulling Leora gently with him. "We move now." They climbed down the tower's broken stairwell, stepping into the wet streets. The city glowed with neon fire, but to Daniel, it felt like a prison collapsing behind him. Together they slipped into the shadows, avoiding drones, dodging patrols. Every corner was danger, every step was risk, but now they moved with purpose. They were not running just to survive. They were running toward freedom. Hours later, they reached the edge of the city where broken hangars rusted against the horizon. Old ships lay in pieces, forgotten by time. Daniel's heart sank until Leora touched one of the wrecks. Her hands glowed again, brighter now, fed by the faint starlight overhead. The ship hummed weakly, then stronger, as if answering her call. Daniel stared in awe. "You can fix it?" "Not fix," she said softly. "Awaken." The engines roared to life, blue light spilling across the dark field. Daniel climbed aboard with her, his heart racing. As the ship rose, the city behind them lit with alarms, soldiers shouting, drones swarming. But it was too late. The engines carried them higher, faster, into the clouds. Daniel held Leora's hand as the stars opened before them. She turned to him, her eyes glowing softly now, no longer with fear but with hope. "You were the first human who treated me as more than a thing," she whispered. "You saw me." Daniel squeezed her hand. "And I'll keep seeing you. Forever." The ship broke through the last of the clouds, and the endless sky opened, filled with stars. For the first time, they weren't symbols of distance or loss. They were a promise. Together they left the city behind. Together they flew toward a new world, and as the stars filled the screen, one truth remained clear. Humanity's greatest strength was not in conquest or control, but in love that defied chains forever.